So grateful to be joined by the three of you to talk a little bit about resiliency. It's come up already in conversation. And of course, there's so many dimensions of resiliency that we're going to try to narrow down and focus on just a few in the time that we have. Thank you, Frida Porter, Tribal Administrator of the Lumbee River Tribe of North Carolina, for being with us. Thomas Hall, Executive Director of the Thomas Family Center for Entrepreneurship and Incubator. I had to take a breath halfway to say that. At UNC Pembroke, and then Patricia Hammonds, Director of the Lumber River Workforce Development Board. I want to start by asking each of you, when you hear this word resiliency, what does that mean to you? Frida.
Sure. At the Lumbee tribe, you know, we were able to respond to the disaster in a very positive way. So there was a sense of urgency about our response. And, you know, first of all, we assured that our elders and the residents of our homes were safe. And then secondly, we leapt into the mode of looking at properties and assessing damages. And so there was a sense of urgency.
But what allowed you to respond so quickly? Because clearly there must have been a sense of urgency elsewhere, and not every community was able to do what you did.
Well, the Lumbee tribe has a mission. And our mission is all about providing a safe, affordable home for our families in the Indian community, in the Lumbee community. And so it's a natural response for us to be a caregiver, I would say, to basically the community. And I thought about this before we got here, and you know, we were very responsive to our community, to the county, and to our region, actually, to provide support for the rest of the county. For example, FEMA came in. Well, first of all, the Red Cross came to the Lumbee tribe requesting a location to reestablish the Emergency Operations Center. So one of the first things that we did before the Hurricane Florence actually made landfall, they moved their EOC to Pembroke. So just that's an example of the kind of behaviors that the Lumbee tribe is about to the county. We are a partner to the rest of the county. And then also FEMA. FEMA was a very significant partner of our county and our region. We were able to establish a DRC in one of our community buildings. So we just had the mentality of, you know, providing that support to the whole region.
So you had the desire, obviously, but you also had the resources, the places, the spaces to share.
We did.
Thomas, when you hear the word resiliency and you think of this region, what do you think of?
Yeah, so for me, resiliency is all about bouncing back from adversity in some way. You see that, certainly saw that in Matthew and Florence. You see that in everyday life with startups. We deal primarily with startups who get knocked down all the time. So it's a function of your character, whether you have grit, also resources and things like that.
Patricia?
Yes, resiliency. Oh, wow. To me, that means fighting. That means whenever you are faced with adversity, doing whatever you have to do to get back on your feet. And within our local area, we've been hit by 2 devastations. But I can look at our community and I look at our people within our community. We're willing to do the work, to do what we have to do in order to get back on our feet. And while we have resources, they're limited. So working with the resources that we do have, I can speak on behalf of our agency, the Lumber River Council of Governments, and our staff. We immediately jumped on the opportunity to help our local area get back on their feet, even before we were back at work. I'm sorry, I'm getting touched. So, but
As well, you
yeah,
should.
that was for me, that's what it is. It's doing what we have to do in order to survive through adversity.
So we hear in each of your responses resiliency as being a matter of mission, of habit, of grit. There are some who would argue that it is easier for a region to be resilient if there is a pre-existing vision of what that region should look like. And I'm curious from your perspective, Thomas, do you see a regional vision?
Well, it's interesting. I came down here 2.5 years ago, so I'm not a native.
That's why I asked you the question.
I like this area very much. I would say I don't feel there's currently an sort of a North Star, an overreaching vision that's been set. And I agree with you that it helps to be resilient if you can head towards that. I think this culture in this area probably has developed that, but in the time I've been here, it's gotten pretty difficult. I do know also that it's there's a lot of good minds and good people down here working on this. I know NC Rural Center and Thread Capital, a state group has come down here and done roundtables, and Golden Leaf has been down here, and NC Idea, and a lot of groups are down here trying to help establish that vision. So I have no doubt that that'll get formulated and established, but I would say it's not quite there yet.
So let me ask the old-timers, do you think you have a regional vision?
Well, I want to ask Tom to think about that again, because he is the one who has established this partnership between several entities, including the Lumbee tribe and the town of Pembroke and the university. And that is just one area, but that is one area that is working very well. And there have been some really lofty goals that they've established that they're working toward, and a lot of those things have come to fruition. So I think that the kind of vision that he is working toward for a smaller part of the county is but it is working. And the Main Street program, for example, but all of, I'll just use the three of us on the stage here today, we're working together in different capacities. The Lumbee tribe has benefited from the Council of Governments through its offering workforce development. We had a number of individuals through the disaster recovery program, and we were able to help speed up our recovery at the Culture Center because we had...
Because of that vision.
Because we had 10 plus people that were provided to us by the Lumber River Council of Government. So there's a, somebody asked about a shared vision, and I believe that, that it is working.
So Patricia, what would the region need for that shared vision to be more clear, more compelling, with deeper penetration, so that a newcomer who gets here sees it immediately?
Right. Well, first it starts with all of us working together, as Frida mentioned, because I think we all want a prosperous local area. We all want to be relevant, and we all have these ideas, all of our leaders. We talk, we have our meetings, we have these conversations about how we want our local area to be successful. So it's actually following through with it, all of us coming together, coming up with a definitive plan and following through with it. And if we all could come together and develop the process and action plan, actually put it into action, then it would be more enticing for others to notice us more. But it's the resources, it's everyone is working in their particular agencies, in their duties, but it's like we all basically, we need to work closer together.
So let's stay with that for a moment and talk about some challenges to resiliency. And Frida, I wonder if you might just share, when you think about the physical infrastructure of this region, where you see particular challenges?
The physical infrastructure. Well, during the storm, we had a lot of, we suffered greatly with our infrastructure, and I'll get into, just talk about the Culture Center Dam. That's probably the worst case scenario we've got, but our infrastructure, our roads and our drainage system failed in a number of the subdivisions. So there's a lot of washouts. The water just had nowhere to go, so it just kept coming back to that area, and it just washed out. It had nowhere to go. And so infrastructure, like the drainage systems, the bridges, you know, we had some issues with bridges. But our main issue at the Lumbee tribe was and is our dam. We have a dam at our culture center, which is our very special place at the Lumbee tribe. It is a very historical site to the Lumbee people. It's almost 60 years old, and it has a lake on it. It is about an 90-acre lake, and part of that lake has it has a dam, and the dam overtopped in Matthew first, and then it overtopped a second time during Florence. So while we were preparing for the restoration after Matthew, of course, you know, we have Florence, and it happens even worse during Florence. So the dam was not rated at the time of the first storm, and so we were dealing with the issue of right now what we're dealing with is getting the dam permit to get those repairs done. But the main point that I need to share with everybody is that some of this infrastructure, these infrastructure issues, the worst thing about it is when it causes harm to individuals. Well, downstream of this dam, we have a number of families that, you know, could be impacted to the point of loss of life. And
very helpful.
So I had the good fortune today to speak with our emergency management director, Mr. Sprayberry, about our permit. So our goal is
These are the good things that ncIMPACT does, by the way.
Right.
Make
Thank
those
you.
connections. So you've been talking a lot, Thomas, about small business, and obviously very important to the economic vitality of this region. But what are the challenges to the infrastructure that you need in order for small businesses to thrive?
Great question. I want to respond a little bit first with what Frida said on the vision. There's a lot of challenges, and you can see the challenges actually started before the hurricanes even hit, and they exist in terms of loss of population, opioid, diabetes, mental health issues, things like that. They all affect startups. And the university and the tribe and the council of governments are all working on those. I want to make sure that I was a little more positive in that area. The university in particular has a health sciences group coming up and a new business school, and is working very hard, and I know the tribe is also doing that. In terms of challenges, here's the biggest problem, and it is pretty executional. When a startup comes in and they want to start a business, a lot of times they need money. They want to have a good idea, but eventually they need money. And a lot of these folks had their credit histories destroyed because they're shifting their money into fixing their house. And if they don't have their credit score in the right area, they're not going to get a loan. Yeah. And banks are out of the picture, no venture capitalists in this area, and they wouldn't be helping startups anyway. And their friends and family who are normally sources, they're probably fixing their own homes too. So when you have a hurricane and a natural disaster like this, it ripples through the whole system. And I would say one area that could be very helpful, and as I mentioned, Thread Capital, they're very much in the leading in this area, is to try to get funding to people whose credit histories have been destroyed from hurricanes, and that would be very helpful, as well as basic consulting and things like that. I think the funding area would be a good point to start.
Terrific. And Patricia, will go to you last on this question of challenges. So all across North Carolina, people are trying to upskill their labor force. But what are the particular challenges in this region?
In this region, with the, as a result of the impact of the hurricanes, we have lost several companies. One of our major employers, Alamac Knits, we actually lost them as a result of Hurricane Matthew, and several individuals were displaced. And because of the damage, they could not reopen. And that's just one example. Just losing jobs, losing our businesses. People are afraid to rebuild. Business owners, some need assistance with funding to start back up. And within workforce development, we can assist certain entities, but when it comes to our private businesses, they're suffering. So, and those are the key employers that can provide those opportunities for our workforce to pay those competitive wages. And if they're not here, then that's a problem. So we already had an issue prior to the hurricanes, but with the impact of them, it's increased. But,
So
I'm sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting to hear each of you know that the challenges were the challenges before
Right.
Matthew and
They're just
Florence.
magnified.
The hurricanes exacerbated those challenges.
Yes.
I assume, though, that they also created some opportunities. And before we get to that, I want to open things up for the audience to ask some questions.
Eric Lewis, NACC Disaster Services. My question is, in addition to rebuilding homes and rebuilding the community itself, how does resiliency help define the community itself?
The question is, how does resiliency help to define the community?
I,
You want to go?
I view it like anytime you have a shared experience when you go through something difficult and emerge on the other side. I mean, I've been through that, whether it's, I was in the Navy, whether it's in the military or through a disaster. And I think that's really what happened in Matthew. I think people came together, had a shared experience, got through it. I think the problem is Florence and maybe other hurricanes. If it starts to become a real annual thing, it's going to be a hard thing. But I view it as if you hang together and you get through it and emerge on the other side, that builds character and that builds resiliency.
Tyler Thomas, Town Manager, Town of Pembroke. Ms. Anita, you talked about vision, and you talked about also about the pre-existing socioeconomic characteristics of this community and in general just rural North Carolina. I would agree that vision has been set historically within the last 3 to 5 years, but when you consider those characteristics of communities, such as high poverty, drug abuse, et cetera, poor health outcomes, et cetera. I mean, the list goes on and on for Robeson County in rural North Carolina. When you layer 2 hurricanes on top of insufficient resources in small communities, it just, as you've said, further exacerbates the ability of poor, small, under-resourced communities to be able to reach and obtain or attain that vision. So my question would be, how do you foresee organizations such as yourself, ncIMPACT, or others being able to come alongside communities such as ours, such that we would be able to reach and attain that vision that we have set for ourselves, given the resource constraints that we have?
That's a great question. I totally appreciate that I thought I was asking all the questions today, but I'm happy to try to answer it. So obviously, one of the challenges in any circumstance like this is to make sure that you're building capacity to respond to what I think someone already noted is likely to be a more frequent occurrence than has been in the past. We're going to have these natural disasters, and we're going to have to figure out how to build a capacity around a resilient physical infrastructure, around a resilient economy, and around a resilient workforce. Our challenge is to be there beside you, helping you identify not just the ingredients to that resiliency, but really thinking about what are some opportunities for looking at best practices from other places similarly situated. As you've pointed out, this region is within the context of many other rural regions across the state, but it has its own set of assets, as is true for every region. And so we're going to be there with you, helping you identify those assets and helping you figure out how to put those together in ways that makes this region even stronger. Other questions, and not of me, of the panel.
Before we get into the question, I appreciate you all, Anita, for coming to our local area and putting us out there, giving us some attention, because I feel like we've been forgotten. So thank you. I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. We'll take one more question.
I'm Harvey Godwin, chairman of the Lumbee tribe, and we are hearing a lot of things that did happen, and we overcame a lot of things. We had food insecurity. We know all the ills we had before the 2 hurricanes. And the organizations that have spoken here today fed thousands and thousands of hot meals to people. We had outside people who came in, like Sean Penn's group, JPHRO, and we had Chef Jose Andres and World Central Kitchen came in. So we had a lot of partners we never had before, but it created great opportunities for the future in these partnerships. And I would ask the panel to please, a lot of positive things have come out of these 2 events, but could you give us some examples in the last 18 months until now of some things that you may have done or you've seen done that have given the people healing and hope?
That is a wonderful question, an amazing way to end this panel. So we'll start here and we'll just go down the line. Give us a couple of things you've seen that give hope.
Well, I think, Chairman, the economic opportunities that have surfaced as a result of the hurricanes is just a very bright spot. The Lumbee tribe itself is just in the housing repairs, over $7.5 million in opportunities to our local contractors. And beyond that, and we've got new communities that are about to come out, a Dreamcatcher community that's going to be more than approximately $9 million project, and that will bring 50 houses to Robeson County. So there is a bright spot to all of the issues that we've suffered with these 2 hurricanes.
And I'm just going to ask if the audience would applaud after everyone on the panel has a chance to share their good news stories. So applause, please.
There's 2 things I want to say. I think actually the response and the amount of information from Matthew to Florence was much, much better. Florence, I mean, we had a lot of data, we had a lot of programs, a lot of agencies came out with the information very quickly, so we were able to help startups. But the good news, worthy of a clap, I think, is for both Matthew and Florence, the incubator that we run, which is about a mile away from here, was shut down for a couple months, and all the startups scattered. And after we recovered and got the building fixed up again, they all came back. So our incubator is completely full, and we have a waiting list of startups. And that, to me, it's a sign of economic vitality and confidence and all that.
And so tell everybody about the startups that you haven't seen recently, because that was some good news to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. I was telling Anita that we have a couple of construction startups that they've disappeared. Now, the silver lining with the disaster is construction companies are flat out. And we have 2 startups, one called Lady Build Construction, which is all ladies, if you want a construction firm that's all ladies. And I haven't seen them in like 3 months. They still email me, but they're out working, and they all have tons of work, which is good news.
Good deal.
Very good.
Okay. From our point of view at the Lumber River Council of Governments, we were provided an opportunity to be able to offer temporary positions through the Hurricane Matthew program and the Hurricane Florence program. And we started immediately as soon as we were able to as soon as we got power and internet connection, to reach out to the state to ask for funding. So we received, with Hurricane Matthew, we were able to place over 450 individuals in, oh, yay, I'm not done. We were able to place over that number of people, and we spent about $7.5 million with Hurricane Matthew. And with Hurricane Florence, we are in the process of course, fulfilling the temporary positions for our local area. So far, we've placed over 324 individuals in temporary positions, and we spent roughly about $2 or $3 million to provide those services. And not only are we providing the opportunity for our customers that were dislocated from the hurricane or that have been unemployed, we're helping rebuild our local area. And that right there is healing in itself. It's our area being revitalized, being restored, and being a part of that. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So thank you, Patricia, for the nice words earlier. It is true that when the waters recede, the television cameras go away. And one of the things that we hope to do through this town hall is share with the rest of North Carolina the stories of remarkable triumph in this area, but also be real about how hard it is to rebuild after a hurricane. I was struck by Director Sprayberry saying, it's not about putting you in a better position. Sometimes it's not even about making you whole. And that's true for all sorts of federal and state programs. Right. What makes you whole, what puts you in a better position, is the support of your neighbors and community. And so I just wanted to be sure the rest of the state had a chance to see how much you all rock. Thank you.